I'm sad it's our last class. I was going to ask Tim if maybe we could reconvene, do something like in the fall at the end of the summer, so we can kind of have a recap, like what really happened, and that might be a fun little reunion we could aim for. So
Yeah,
I'm up for that if all of you want to do that. So we'll just make a note on our calendars and we'll just pop onto a Zoom something or other. Sound good?
yeah, that would be fun.
Great, great. Um, so I'm excited about this class for a number of reasons. One is your designs are just fantastic. It's really fun to see how you started with something small and then you've just elaborated on it. And I'm saving them to the end, the best for the end. But I'm so proud of all of you for showing up to class, for doing the work, for getting your homework in, and et cetera, et cetera. So yeah, kudos to you. Yes, good job. I have to say, this class is about rewilding, and it's a little bit out there because, what we've been talking about design and structure and elements of style. And now I'm asking you to just kind of unravel all that. Well, not really, but I do want you to keep rewilding in mind. And it's a term that's becoming more popular in landscape designs, when you're talking native plants and you're talking about planting for wildlife. And of course, in our vegetable gardens, we don't really want wildlife in our gardens. So we set up these big boundaries and we say, no, 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 don't come in. So I want to talk a little bit about how rewilding in a vegetable garden can work, because really, when we started this, it was about the whole landscape as a whole and everything working together. And I'm not saying just open the gates to the rabbits, but I do think that there has to be an element of working together to make sure that we're creating habitat that's healthy for people, for plants, for everything. And so I'll be going over that a little bit. But most of all, gardens aren't perfect. I have only shown you pictures of perfect gardens. You think my garden is perfect, and it's not, but I'm only going to show you the good ones. And I have to actually admit that I went through a lot of photos of my garden to find you some that weren't perfect. And I don't take pictures of things that aren't perfect. I just want it to look perfect, but it is not. It's like having a bad hair day. Most of the time, it's kind of, it's run of the mill. But I do say that I keep it weeded, and weeding is the most important thing you can do from as soon as you can get out in the garden in the spring to the end of fall. One weed plant creates 10,000 seeds. Okay. Now, weeding and rewilding don't go together. Rewilding is a whole different thing. Weeding is something you need to continue to be vigilant about, especially in your vegetable garden. There's nothing worse than going into a vegetable garden and not knowing where the lettuce is because there's too many weeds. And a lot of gardeners do that, but you are not going to, because you know better. You know that you've worked really hard on this design. You want it to be beautiful. You want it to be productive, and you're not going to let the weeds get the upper hand here, right? So never give up weeding. But, organization is really the key. And I think we've talked a lot about different ways to have low maintenance and designs where you can keep the weeds down in the paths and things like that. So, perfect gardens are not perfect, but they do require a certain amount of participation in terms of weeding. And your designs are amazing, as I've said. And, I know this week's homework was a little confusing. And I have to say that all of these lesson plans and the homework was set up weeks in advance. Like when Tim first asked me to do this, which I can't even remember when that was, in the fall sometime. And I sent the class structure and what I thought the homework would be. I find as every week we end up, like, I think there was one week where I didn't end up talking about something, so we had to push it forward. I think that was the soil one, because we spent so much time on plants. So everything got pushed around a little bit. So it was confusing. And what I really intended for you to do is to actually submit your final design this week so we could look at it. And some of you did. And some of you kind of pushed the final design into this week's homework. If you feel you're ready to submit your final design, go for it. You know, it's like the big 60-point mark. You're all going to get 60 points with that final design. But a lot of the work that I saw that was submitted this week looks like your final design. I could only give you 10 points because that's how we set up the structure. So it makes no sense except for the fact that we did it in advance. So whenever you want to turn in your design and is great, because I think a lot of you already have your design and it looks good. I think that's it. Does anybody have any questions?
Yes, I do have a question.
Okay.
So are you saying that if some people feel like their design is complete, they can turn the same thing in again
Yeah,
for the next homework?
if that's what you feel, yeah, because this is the
Okay.
last class, so it's not
Yeah.
like I'm gonna be doing homework between now and, you know what I'm saying?
Okay, yeah, no, just to clarify.
Yeah,
Got it.
yeah. I mean, you know, my concept of the you'll see in the work that I'm showing, my concept of the final design is, you know, your design plan with your plant list, which a lot of you had done last week. And then some of you just kind of fine-tuned it or tweaked it, or maybe you even changed it altogether. You might have.
I feel like I did that, yeah.
I think you did, but that's okay because it's always evolving. And, you know, in many ways, I think that's why I set it up like that. I'm realizing because the other assignment was to take your area and put your stakes and twine in it to see how it looks. And if it's not really what you're thinking on paper, you can tweak it. And I think Bob you did a nice job of drawing it in. You didn't do stakes, but you drew it in. We'll show that because it might, once you actually put that paper to soil kind of movement, it may not be exactly the way you want it, and you'll come back to the drawing board and change it again. So I think that's why I was sort of leaving that open if you wanted to. Somebody just sent me a chat, but I can't see chats from my window, so I'll have to look at that separately. Okay, so I'm just going to screen share and jump right into this whole thing. We do not have any breakout sessions because I've got so many slides. So feel free to stop, you know, say, whoa, I have a question, or, you know, get up and get yourself a glass of water, whatever because I'm just going to roll with this. And I'm going to miss the breakout sessions, but I think you have done such a good job of participating when we get to the design part that I think that serves its purpose very well. Okay, tonight we're talking about rewilding, and I decided rather than start with the designs, we're going to just jump right into the class, and we'll save all the designs for the end. So rewilding, what is rewilding? Well, rewilding is a verb. Jump ahead. It means to return to a more natural or wild state, to increase the biodiversity and restore the natural process. Now, I have to say that I'm all for it. You know, there's a lot of workshops and conferences and classes and books that are coming out on rewilding, and a lot of them are about pollinators and birds and creating natural habitats. And you know, I'm all for that, because when we create a garden in our landscape, we're essentially cutting into the soil, you know, creating an area that we may have to take down some bushes or some trees. You know, we're disturbing what's there to make it beautiful. And there's nothing wrong with that, but I do feel that we have to find a balance between the natural world and the wild and the domesticated state that we really want to create. Because really our gardens are not just about ourselves or growing food for ourselves, although we like to think they are, but we know they're not. I know from talking with all of you, I'm getting a good sense of who you are, and you understand my philosophy as well, that it's really about inviting birds and caterpillars and snakes and frogs and, you know, all kinds of things, because that's really what we want to do. We just want to be outside and enjoy the process of being outside. And some of our landscapes aren't as wild as others. I know some of you have great big fields, and some of you live in a fairly tight community. if you saw my yard, and maybe sometime if you come to Vermont, I'd be happy to show you around. I live in a village and all of my neighbors have lawns and no landscaping. And when I first moved here, I was determined to keep a wildlife barrier around the outside. And I only have less than a quarter acre, so that was not easy. But I found that all the creatures were in my yard. I would get all the frogs. I'd get all those tiny little frogs. I'd get the big frogs. I got the snakes. I got the chipmunks. I got everybody. And you know what? I just loved it. I just loved it because I was creating a habitat. It gets a little much sometimes when you get the groundhogs and things, but you know, that's what it's all about. We're here to create a nice environment for ourselves and for nature. So to me, that's really what rewilding is. There's a wonderful book by Isabella Tree and Charlie Burrell, and she's British, called The Book of Wilding. And it speaks about their farm, which is a huge estate in England. I don't think we can all relate to the property that they have, but they had been farming for a long time, and organic farming, you know, doing the right thing, et cetera, et cetera. And then they decided, and I'm not going to tell you the whole story because I honestly have not read the whole book, but I've listened to Isabella Tree give a lecture. And what they decided to do was allow their cattle and their grazing animals to just roam free, not to keep them in corrals. And they found that a lot of the natural vegetation started to grow up again in different ways, that they really were trying to hark back to the time when the buffaloes roam and when, you know, wild creatures lived on this earth. And there was just a whole different type of habitat and grasses and grains and things for them to eat that we no longer have because we've been highly cultivating and organizing our food systems. And so it's a beautiful concept about wilding this natural area. And one of the examples they give in their book is our yard. And, you know, a lot of the designs that we've been working on look very much like this. We have the lawn, we have the garden shed, we have the trees and the shrubs. Now, this doesn't have edibles in it, but you understand what I'm talking about. It has a leaf blower. It looks like some kind of a little, you know, insecticide spray or best whatever fertilizer. And this is the beginning of rewilding. It's being able to create not so much lawn. Was that a tree in the background? Yes, a tree came down, but they left the stump, which allows creatures still to live there, pileated woodpeckers and different bugs and insects. And, you know, again, this is not necessarily edibles, but you can visualize how this could look as it starts to evolve, even a little water pond starting there. And then, you know, taking it that next step further of allowing things to get really wild and still having an area to get through and having the natural stream come into the pond. And, you know, it's not exactly what you probably want in your backyard, but you get the idea that this is true rewilding on a suburban scale. And so this is just sort of the basic concept to keep in mind. And I'm not telling you that, you know, all the designs you've been working on, you should just toss out, but to maybe integrate some way to keep them more natural and connected to your, the natural world around you. So rewilding is about letting nature take care of itself and to shape the land and to repair damaged ecosystems and restore healthier landscapes. This was another example that they gave in the talk that I attended, which was at the Chelsea Flower Show. This rewilding garden won the best in show at the Chelsea Flower Show in 2022. So that's pretty extraordinary to go from, you know, these. I don't know if you've ever been to the Chelsea Flower Show. I haven't, but it's on my wish list. You know, to be able to go from something that's usually tight and cultivated. You know, I remember going to the Boston Flower Show and seeing all the tulips in a row and the perfect willow tree and the swan swimming in the pool, and you know, everything's all perfectly manicured. To accepting a garden that looks like this and consider it best of show. I feel that it's a real statement to where we're headed as gardeners, and how important it is to preserve the natural habitat. This again is from her slide because I just thought it was so wonderful. I don't know, it looks like it might be Brazil or something, but this is maybe what we all need to get to. This is what we all strive for, some kind of a very green habitat that's in our cities. I don't, almost looks like it's been photoshopped, doesn't it? It's a little bit wild. But I do think, again, you know, whatever we can do as gardeners and as horticulturists and as garden designers to encourage greenery, that will help everybody and everything. So, geez, I'm having a hard time with my pointer, and I'm sorry. So, you know, a few of the concepts that involve rewilding that we have covered in this class. One is know your land. We started with that. We started with understanding the light, where the sun is coming from, the soil, the wind, the rain patterns, getting to know the history of your land and how the land was used before you arrived, and really just sort of checking in with everything. I know when I started reading the Wendell Berry books, he's a farmer from Kentucky and just a wonderful writer and farmer, and you know, agricultural hero, really. And I remember the concept he had, which is walking the perimeters of his land every night or every morning, just right around the edges and talking to the land. And I've always done that if I can, just walk around the edges and just, you know, greet the greenery, so to speak. And of course, he's talking about a 10-acre farm or a 20-acre farm, but I think it's really important to remember that we're connected to the places where we live. Okay, I don't know why I'm having trouble with this. And we talked a little bit about seed saving, and I say forget tidy and save seeds. You know, let a few of those lettuce plants go to seed. It may not look pretty, but I think you'll be quite fascinated by the process of watching plants go to seed. We so often take them out of our garden, except for weeds. Don't let those weeds go to seed, but allow a few plants to grow into a full cycle that forms seeds. It will give you a new perspective about maintenance. It will give you a new perspective about what's possible in terms of saving seeds. And it may even make you start, you know, putting them into your landscape as part of the design element, as they do here at the Chanticleer Gardens. And remembering that seeds are free, you don't have to be buying seeds. But if you have not been saving your seeds, maybe this is the year that you start to save a few of your seeds. You know, start with the legumes because those are the easiest ones. Maybe the beans and the peas. Definitely flower seeds are easy to save. Nasturtiums are very easy. And, you know, some of your plants that you've been growing a while, you probably know that they probably just self-sow themselves. So be somewhat selective, but try and save your seeds, and maybe you can package them and give them away to your gardening friends for Valentine's Day or Christmas or birthdays or sometime. You know, there's nothing more special than getting something that you've made. And if you're not talented artist, just something you grew is equally as good. So be thinking about that right now, about what you might want to be saving for seeds. And remember that heirloom seeds are seeds that you can save year after year. And hybrid seeds, excuse me, I'm sorry, I'm having a hard time with my arrow. And hybrid seeds will produce sterile seeds and not worth saving. They produce seeds, but generally they're not going to grow. Like think, you know, seedless watermelons, that sometimes they have a few seeds in them, but those are obviously not going to grow anything from seed. And you know, there's a lot of hybrid seeds, like a lot of peppers and squash and things that you won't be able to grow the same variety, but you can certainly save the seed. But try and choose heirloom or open pollinated seeds, and those will give you the benefit of having the same plant year after year. Avoid plastic, and this is a big one for me. Gardeners use plastics that are not recyclable. Instead of buying plants, learn to start from seed, direct sown into the garden. And I don't know about you, but those little plastic 6-packs, they're not recyclable. I save them and I use them year after year until they completely fall apart. But there's only so many plastic pots you can keep in your garden shed. I showed you my plastic starter plants trays that I use, the what I call the plug trays, and you can get really good quality of those, and they'll last 20 years or so. So those are generally acceptable, but so often those proven winter plants and those things that we buy in nurseries, those are not recyclable unless we use them. I have to laugh because there's some anonymous person who will drop all their plastic pots that they've used in their garden on my front porch, and I've never seen them drop them off, but they're always there. And I don't think it's to be mean. I think they just think that I can probably reuse their plastic pots because they're too embarrassed to take them to the dump. But unfortunately, most of them go to the dump. And, even if they have numbers on the bottom, they're all going to be a little different. So that's one of the things I feel a little guilty about as a gardener is that I've used a lot of plastic pots in my life. And I'm very aware of plastic in other people's yards. I know when I see these people planting these huge, native fields with different things and different species, and there's just hundreds of plastic pots that they're using to plant those, and hopefully they'll be able to reuse them. I can say from being in the garden business that people would bring plastic pots back to us thinking we could reuse them, but we can't as a nursery because they all have to be scrubbed out and Clorox and bleached, and they need to be sterilized. So it's a real quandary as gardeners. We think we're doing the right thing, but so often we're polluting more so than we mean to be. So if you, whenever possible, start your seeds directly in the garden. Think something like mesclun or loose leaf lettuce. A lot of the salad greens really love to just go right in the garden, and they'll thrive in direct soil rather than being planted, pre-planted in pots. I have to laugh when I go to the nurseries and I see mesclun in little 6-packs, and I go, that's the most ridiculous thing. And then when I see people buying them, it's all I can do to keep my mouth shut, to say, why are you buying that? You can grow it directly in. Yeah, I'm not good to go to nurseries with because I do have a big mouth, and I like to tell people what to do or not to do, only because I feel so strongly that there's so many plants that we can grow directly in our garden that are so much happier, like dill, for instance, or arugula. You don't want to ever buy those in 6-packs. You want to put them right in the ground and you'll be much happier. We can talk more about that as we go. Layering is a concept that is really important in rewilding, both in the wild and in your gardens. And we've talked a little bit about this, about having the tall plants like the dill, and then the medium height plants like the lemon gem marigolds, and then the basil. I'm just using examples that are here. There's the basil, and then there's the nasturtium. They're all growing at different heights, so you can pack a lot in. And it's really good way to keep the soil from having empty spaces where weeds can jump in. It's really good for the plants. They like to be close together when they have their own room to breathe. So create multi-level ecosystems that support the plants and create combinations that allow the plant pollinators to thrive. So in this case, the dill has clearly gone past the dill stage, but the umbrels are opening up, and boy, do the pollinators love those umbrels. And meanwhile, the basil is just starting to catch up. So there's a lot going on in this very small space. So be thinking about how your plants work together, but also how they're going to benefit the pollinators coming through. Another example of layering, you can see the ruby chard in the background, and the basil and the lemon gems, and then the ring of nasturtiums. And this is about as close as you're going to get to a bad picture of my garden, because it does get a little overrun in August and September. But I kind of like that. I kind of like it when plants just decide they have a mind of their own, and they're not going to pay attention to the rows and the rules of the garden, and they just start to ramble. And at that point I just say, go for it. So, I allow the plants to rule the garden at the end of the season, because really the pollinators need them to produce as much as they can. Another great example of my wild garden and how things will start to grow together. The herbs are very forgiving of growing tightly in a pot. This is the Siam basil growing with the rosemary and parsley on the right-hand side, and on the left-hand side, that's red perilla and Monarda, and I can't tell what else is in there, but there's a bunch of different stuff in there. And, they're very happy. We're not talking, any disease or pests, and everything is just growing along just very happily. So, rewilding is really good for plants as well. Remember to love your soil, and remember, it's not dirt, it's soil. And what feeds your soil ultimately feeds you, because it feeds your plants. So keep it organic. Have it tested if you have any doubts about if you might think you have some deficiencies in certain areas, and build it up with compost and cover crops. And this is what we talked about in the last class, is really building up your soil and working on that soil. There's no such thing as soil that's too good. And example of my soil when I first got here and started to dig in it, and then how it looks now. Try and get that chocolate cake effect. Have it nice and sweet and smell good and be rich and loamy and ready to take those seeds. And the compost we talked about last time, the slow compost that can take 3 years, or the fast compost that takes 1 year. Again, compost is so integral, and it's really amazing how so many communities are now embracing and really making sure that people compost, and that they say it's illegal to be throwing your food out. Well, nobody's monitoring that, but that compost is really the right thing to do. And so just keep working on that compost, boy, oh boy. Allow wild places to flourish. Extinction is a term we often hear attributed to wild things, but not to agriculture. We've lost 90% of our crop diversity. And this is so important. And Will Bonsall of the Scatterseed Project has been a seed-saving hero for many, many years. And I encourage you to look him up. And I think he has a book on this with Chelsea Green. And, that's the one thing I feel I've been a little negligent about, is giving you huge resources of books to look up and websites and podcasts, but I feel that you're going to be drawn and led to those areas on your own. That what I recommend is not necessarily what you need. There's that wonderful Buddhist saying of when the student is ready, the teacher will appear. And I feel just having your devoted interest in doing garden design and letting me plant a few seeds about rewilding and diversity and some of these concepts, I think, will lead you in the direction you need to go. And building an ark. So we're going to talk a little bit about an ark. I think we might have in one of the classes. Mary Reynolds, who I started this class with a quote from Mary Reynolds, and we're going to read that again. Give it at least half of your garden or land back to nature, if not half, as much as you can manage. Now, that's quite a lot if you think about it. If you have a small space, how can you give half of it back to nature? And Mary Reynolds is again, one of my heroes. Her new book is called We Are the Ark. And I can't read this because the top thing here is, my bar is at the top. There we go. I still can't read it. There we go. This is a quote by Jane Goodall, who we all know. Reynolds gives us much needed reason for hope, a much needed reason for hope. The gardener, the conservationist, the city planner, the nature lover will all be inspired, for this wonderful book shows how thousands of even small wildlife-friendly gardens can provide habitat for embattled wildlife around the world. I mean, if that's not enough of a sales pitch for this book, I don't know what is. But really, Mary is talking about returning our gardens to their true nature with acts of restorative kindness. So we are the ARC. ARC means Acts of Restorative Kindness, weaving a patchwork of safe havens for nature globally in our gardens, our schools, our public spaces, and beyond. And so you can look her up on that website. And she talks about the steps. I can't remember how many steps there are. There might be 5 or 6, but step number 1 is give at least half of your garden or land back to nature. If not half as much as you can manage, try to grow as much of your own organic food as possible in the other half. Protect and guide your ARC to rewild through nature's natural processes, and it will become a more and more complex ecosystem over time. All land is welcome, even a window box full of local soil that allows the native weed seeds to flourish. Oh, weed seeds, well, we're talking native, see, it's a difference, right? And provide food and reproductive partners for the insects is great. So, when you take this concept, it might lead you to have a more wild yard than you want. And one of her steps, which I think is wonderful, is she recommends having a sign that you put in your yard so that when people go by your house, it says, I'm rewilding. This is an art garden. And it will inspire other people. And they won't just say, oh my gosh, they've given up mowing or they've given up, taking care of their yard. Instead, you're doing it with intention. And so you can take that as far as you want to, but at least we are all making the effort to grow our own organic food, and that's so important. So just taking Mary Reynolds' concept one step deeper, but also going back to the very first quote when we started, and I had you close your eyes and we did that vision. This is the cover of her first book, The Garden Awakening. I'm going to read it closely. Just read it one more time so we can really grasp this. We are only brief guardians of these portions of land we call our gardens. We do not and cannot truly own them. Our bodies are made of the earth and return to it eventually, but the land will always remain alive. Everything we need to survive and all that nourishes us comes from the earth, its soil, the atmosphere, the sun, and the stars beyond. We are simply walking pieces of the earth. We are drawn to certain locations where the land resonates with us and pulls us towards it. People can spend their entire lives looking for the places they belong, places where they feel at home, where they fit and can completely set down roots. We are simply a reflection of the land beneath us, and nature is always waiting for us to return home. The land connects us in ways we don't always understand. Each of us is attracted to a different space, reflecting our personalities. And every landscape also has its own character that helps shape the culture of the people who live there. So I'm actually going to stop for just a second because I just want to check my chat box to see what people's saying. Oh, good. Somebody says they'll be in Sugarbush next week. Great. I don't see anything else, but I'm going to stop for a minute. And I just want to talk to you. Like, how are you feeling about this rewilding thing?
I love it, and I think I need a sign for my yard.
You want to get a sign for your yard? Is that what you said?
Yeah.
Yeah, I do too. I do too. Yeah, and if you go to her website, you can actually download a design that you can put on a sign. I know.
I think I might have told the class before that I live in a development, but I back up to the woods, and we have a lot of open space that the development cuts, and I want to make it a meadow. So I made half of my side yard a meadow as like a demonstration to hopefully show them that it's pretty and, low maintenance and everything.
Huh.
I have a sign that says Habitat Restoration Project that is, a nice one, and people always stop by and ask questions, and it's kind of an opportunity to educate people a little bit and have a conversation.
That's nice. That's nice. Yeah, I feel like as gardeners, it's our it's our role to share what we love with others. And so if we can educate at the same time as let people be inspired, I think it's really important. Anybody else want to comment? I mean, so I'll tell you a little story, and I'm just curious to know what you think. I don't know if I've told you this story before. So one of these conferences I was at, there were two speakers who were just talking all about bringing, building, planting blueberries and nut trees and, having more edible landscaping and more of that permaculture design that I think some of you embrace. And then somebody asked the question, well, how do I keep the birds from eating my blueberries? Or what do I do about the chipmunks eating the nut trees and stuff? And my gut reaction was, but that's the whole point of rewilding. You encouraging some of this, get what you need. But I do think that there's a fine line between what we're growing for ourselves and what we're growing for nature. So I just wonder how you might respond or how you feel about that.
Well, I would say I completely agree, but so the way I've dealt with that is I have an area that is completely open. I live in New Jersey, and there's just a lot of deer, and the kind of damage that deer do, it's not really possible to recover from in the season. So
Yeah.
I have an area in the front that is a seeded meadow that is completely open to deer, but I do tend to plant things that deer don't prefer.
Mhm.
And then in a fenced in area that's in the back, then is the garden that I've been working on, that would be an edible garden, or that has things that are kind of deer candy and simply would be devastated if they were exposed.
Yeah. Yeah. That word damage is important because they can cause a lot of damage for sure.
Sometimes we also say deer pressure. There's heavy deer pressure.
That's interesting. Yeah. And in Vermont, we always say we harvest our deer, so we don't have a problem.
Yeah, New Jersey can, take a page out of that book.
Yeah. Yeah. Interesting. Interesting. Well, I don't know. I think there's a fine balance here of what we do, and deer are probably in their own category completely. But yeah, you're all going to probably have some problem with wildlife in some way. But I don't know. Just want to say anything, or should I just keep going?
Keep going.
Keep going. All right, I'm closing this chat. Roz, I see your chat, and we will talk about that. I don't remember exactly, but I'll respond to it when I can. All right, so it's important to find pleasure. That's what the whole point of this is, and grow the food that you love to eat, and take the time to savor the flavor, the visual beauty, and the sensual qualities that elevate the experience of eating and nourishment, and choosing things for flavor, but also for nutritional value, such as the purple carrots. We talked about the purple foods, how they're very high in antioxidants, but they aren't necessarily as good tasting as some of the sweeter tomatoes. The big red tomatoes are not as healthy as the tiny little purple ones, but they sure are good. And making our gardens beautiful. We've talked a lot about this in class, the beauty of cultivating nice aesthetic gardens, and that's why you're all taking this class, and I can tell that you are definitely on your way to that. This is a cute little children's garden that I ran into at the Coastal Maine Botanic Gardens, and you can see it's not perfect. It's a little overgrown, but again, to me, this is the perfect example of what a healthy garden really should look like. It's not necessarily cultivated with long straight rows or very obvious ways to get into that garden to harvest the broccoli. In fact, it actually looks a little overgrown with calendula, but all those flowers mixed in with the food is attracting the pollinators into the garden. I had to put this picture in. This is my friend Peggy. And if you look at her face, she just loves her garden. And this is really what I aspire to. She just can't help herself. She started just with a little garden here around, and this is when she rented this house. She's bought it now, but she just keeps adding a little bit more and a little bit more and a little bit more. So I really put this in, and look at all the pots on the deck. And I put this in mostly because she gets such joy from this garden. And I'm often saying, slow down, Peggy, you don't need so many pots. How can you water all those things? And I'm kind of telling her to not put so much garden in, but she just loves it so much. And so my advice continues to be, start small and just keep adding to it. And it will soon eventually become the garden that you hope to have. This is a little planting in front of my garden, the Kiss Me Over the Garden Gate and the sunflowers. And again, just seeing how those two plants go together. They wouldn't be something that I would have planned on paper, but somehow they got planted together. And I just love the way they're sort of in a dance. That's what I think of in the fall garden, is sometimes things just dance. And this is a wonderful plant called Kiss Me Over the Garden Gate. And it's a 10-foot tall plant that just has these wonderful droopy seed pods. And, it's not neat and tidy, but again, that's not the purpose of gardening. The purpose is to have something that's really fun and engaging. So make your garden beautiful and plant it with seeds and plants as your paintbrush to bring out your personality, and keep trying different things that are full of color and that really make your heart beat fast when you go out and go, oh my gosh, it's actually growing. So I had to put these two pictures in, that water feature. I think, Robert, you were the one who was thinking about putting a water feature in, and I was digging around looking for a good water feature to show you. And this is from the Hollister House Garden. And again, I can't recommend enough enough times to go out and visit gardens. The Garden Conservancy has open days gardens all over the United States. I know they have a lot of beautiful ones in Pennsylvania. And if you wanted to take a trip to northwestern Connecticut, I definitely would put Hollister House Garden on your list, and some of those other beautiful gardens around there. And I love the way they've planted it with from lily pads. And so I don't know, they must have a bubbler in there that keeps it going, or maybe they just refresh it every week or so. But having a water feature, and remembering to go out and draw in your garden. I've taken a couple of art classes where we draw plants, and it's amazing how just looking more closely at plants builds an appreciation. You start to notice how the leaves form on the stem and how the flowers are actually folded over on each other. And it's way harder than you can imagine trying to draw even something as simple as an iris. So often we appreciate the beauty and how they look in the garden, but when you actually sit down and get out a piece of paper and a pencil and try and draw that shape, you get to see it in a much deeper perspective. So I encourage you to observe your garden, really dig into it as an art form. And starting with your soil, get your soil ready before you do anything else. This is my garden in the early spring, and I have the garlic in place, but I planted that last fall, but everything is just starting to come up, as you can see. And so getting that garden ready, that soil ready, and then everything else can go crazy. This was definitely a crazy garden year. And again, I was looking for pictures of my garden that are not perfect, but you wouldn't really picture this garden to be the same as that. And I have to say, it's probably not the same year, but this is what a rewilding garden looks like. And I'll try and identify some of these plants. This is artichoke here growing over here in the corner. Obviously the ruby chard here. I have morning glories. I have a Grandpa Ott's morning glory growing up the center of the tree here. Kale, lemon gem marigolds, sunflowers. I must have 20 different things all over the place. This is rhubarb in there, but you recognize this garden a little bit because you see these benches that I always have in the same place. But really just grow as much as you can. I wanted to show you some squash that I had growing in those kind of fabric bags. I think they're quite wonderful. They didn't really work terribly well after a certain point, but those fabric bags are a great way to just keep extending your garden, putting them around the edges. And they have them in every garden center now. And they used to be very expensive because they were made with some kind of felt, and now they're just some kind of paper that's pretty hardy. And so, you know, I think I'll probably try some more again this year for some of the crops that really take off. In these bags, I think are the squash, which are a bit rambly for my little garden. So I tried them in a different area. And then on the left-hand side is that wonderful bird's gourd. Yeah, I guess it's called the birdhouse gourd that is growing, and the plant itself looks like it's about to fade, but the gourds are doing pretty well. So creating that rewilding area, which is a combination of plants that have berries on them for the birds, and the grasses that have a wonderful place for nesting and for birds to find little things for making nests. And, you know, there's just so much that you can do in your garden. And this is a great example. I have no idea where this is. I can't remember. But again, you're looking at the different layers. You're looking at this low layer here and the medium layer here. And then, of course, the very tall layer. And then anything with berries that the birds will be able to munch on. Try and find magic places to sit. And this is the fairy garden at the Coastal Maine Botanical Garden. And if any of you get to Maine, I highly encourage you to go visit the Botanic Garden there. And they have a little area that goes through the woods where anybody who wants to can build fairy houses. And I must have taken 100 pictures of those fairy houses, but this particular tree root is what really grabbed my eye. And so just finding that sweet spot in your garden and create fairy houses if you can, and be inspired by art. I know some of you were inspired by this Sol LeWitt painting, and I wanted to show you a little garden that I designed for a client. This is that stone garden, and I'll show you the gate that they put on this, and then you'll recognize it. But this was a pretty tricky little garden to place, and I had somebody actually set this up with a CAD illustrator so that we knew exactly when we gave it to the contractor how wide this would be, because you can imagine how hard that would be if you just had a sketch. So they had to follow this exactly. And honestly, I'd never do a garden like this again, but it really did turn out nicely. And this is what it looks like from the outside. You probably remember this with the funny little Hobbit house in the background. Let me just turn this back. Oh, they have the Hobbit house just starting, and now they have it finished. And the client sent me this picture. And so things really did work, which is nice. I'm relieved. It's very scary for me if I do a garden design for somebody, and then I'm always worried if it's actually going to work. And luckily, I was successful. But you know, you never know. And just remember that, you know, some of you are doing beautiful designs. This is actually how I do my designs. I'm not very fancy. You know, this is not how I would do a finished design, but just doing something that shows roughly how it's going to fit into that space. And this is a design, I can't remember who, I think I did this for Gardener Supply. And then of course they had a real illustrator do it more naturally, but it doesn't have to be very fancy. But I want to show you a few examples of how you're going to take your paper design and transfer it into the soil. There's a concept that I didn't actually talk about in this class called square foot gardening, where you can actually buy a grid that you put over your garden, and it's a very specific way of blocking off certain areas so that you know where to put your plants so that they have proper spacing. And I think that's what this design was originally for. But I want to show you my little trick for indoor gardening. This was a raised bed. I do remember this now, a long time ago when I was first starting out doing designs. This was for a raised bed garden that I did for Gardener Supply. And I needed to make sure I was getting the spacing right. And so I happened to have a rug in my front hall that is exactly the same size as that garden bed. And I took all my mittens and my hats out of the closet and I placed them down to pretend that they were the plants, so I could sort of visualize how this looked. And I know it's kind of sloppy, but I often do this. I'll put pillows down, and this is what I really recommend you do. If you can't get out, and I know you just got a ton of snow, it's probably going to disappear really quickly. Just play in your house. Just find a rug that's the same size as your garden, or simulate it in some way and put pillows down. And what I call it plain house, because it's kind of like when your children or when you were a child, you kind of put pillows around and say, okay, now this is where this goes, and this is where this goes, and this is where we're going to have our meals, and this is, I mean, plain house is a concept that we're all familiar with. And when you're designing a garden, this is the stage where you're going to be plain house. This is why I recommend when you go out in your yard and you have the stakes and the twine and you set it up so you can walk through that garden and get a sense of how it feels. And so you can do that inside using hats and gloves and a scarf or pillows or whatever you want to do. The other thing I've often done is use tape. If you have all of the designs, I will confess, all of the designs in my very first book, I was renting space in an architect's office, and he had great big carpets, and I would go out with a roll of masking tape, and I would put out the masking tape on the rug and walk through those designs. And that's the only way I knew for sure that it was going to work. What ended up happening is the architect who I rented the space from didn't have a lot of work that spring when I was doing this. And he saw me put these designs out and he said, wait, why don't I put them together on my computer and we can really see if they actually work? And he was pretty impressed that my masking tape designs really did work in his CAD Illustrator. And then he ended up doing all the beautiful watercolor illustrations for the book. And that's my favorite book of all, The Complete Kitchen Garden. But this is how I do it when I can't get outside, and that's me in that white shirt, and I'm out in Michigan somewhere, I think, and I was doing a garden class for, I can't really remember all the details, but I think it was a big community garden, and they had a little area that they were trying to figure out how they were going to plant. And so we worked on various designs, and then we put the tape down and then walked through it. And it really does help you visualize the space. Like these were probably their paths in between. This is the main path here, and these are the auxiliary paths, and then these are the beds. So they could practice how it feels to reach into that bed to see if it was too wide. And it really, I know it sounds so silly, but and look at this room. We had to go around the post there to get a bed in there. But this is really a great way to just visualize how your garden is going to look if you can't get outside. So in the last class, I showed you my system where I use little posts, and this is obviously already sort of set into place, but I still put these up every year just to kind of make sure that everything is square and balanced. This is the chef at the Equinox Hotel. I created a little design on paper for him because I actually wanted to use him in my book. And then we went out and we measured that space. And I came over to his garden one time and he was drilling it. I can't remember exactly what he had here. It was some kind of, I don't know what he had, but he was drilling this instead of turning it over because he's a neighbor of mine, so his soil looks just like mine. And then he had some kids who worked in the kitchen come out and help him, and he dug all that space up. And there he is standing with his sous chef and other people who helped him dig this garden up. But you see, this really helps set up the paths and the little beds, and I can't remember, I guess those, I don't know what that is. Oh, this is the back of the yard where there are all these, that's just part of a hotel, the Equinox Hotel. And then this, you probably remember this picture from my slideshow showing you, here he is standing in the garden with all the herbs and his little path that he put in. And He did a great job, I must say, you know, and he got in my book, which is good. And then this is Margie and her husband, whose name I can't remember. And again, I showed this the last time with their little garden and how they just roped it off with string, and it's really important to get the center point, and then you can measure from either side. And then these are their kids in that same garden harvesting lettuce and flowers that same year. And gosh, these kids are already in their 20s now. Can you believe it? It's been that long. They're in college or something. But I just love the way they enjoyed their garden with their children. And it, you know, again, to just show you my journey, this was my backyard when I first started, and that little raised bed there. And, you know, I think for 1 year, I actually did grow something in that bed. But, you know, if you inherit somebody else's garden, it's never going to be yours. And it was never anything that I knew that I wanted to keep. So this is how I ended up creating my own garden. And at this stage is where I call it plain house, because you're walking through that space and you're visualizing how it's going to look, and you can see that the main paths are 4 feet wide, and the beds are kind of big, but I put in smaller paths in those areas. So this really is how I created my own garden, and how I picture many of you are going to do your own garden as well. And then it just gets busy. I don't know. It gets a little bit too busy sometimes. I don't know what was going on here, but anyways, it just gets busy. And then you come back to spring and you've got the garden as a blank canvas again. So this is where we're all starting off this spring, is just kind of getting ready for the new season and preparing the soil before you plant it, and setting down those stepping stones, and putting in the little things, like I love putting in my trellises and putting in my benches, and making sure everything is all set and ready to go, because before long it's just going to take off and be a wild garden. This is what it looks like when I first started. So you could see I start a lot of my plants in those plug trays, and then I space them out. So there's different ways that I plant my garden. Sometimes I just direct sow. Sometimes I like to space them out. I probably was getting ready for a photo shoot, which is why I set them up just like this. But, you know, every year is going to be a little different. And every year I try it a little differently. But this year I was clearly being very organized, but I'm not that way anymore. I think in terms of my own garden, I have evolved as a gardener. I think I at one point was very concerned about neat and tidy, and now I just want to get food in the ground and have the plants healthy and have it looking reasonably well, but it doesn't have to look perfect. So this quote from Thomas Jefferson: plant a thimbleful of lettuce every morning, and that will make sure that you have plenty of lettuce always growing in your garden. And remember to be patient. This little garden was one that I looked at early in the season with the lemon gem marigolds, and it looks like she has a lot of weeds in there, but this is what the garden looked like in August, with the plants all growing and everything thriving. And but it just takes a little vision and a little patience. So it's important to create sanctuary. This is a student's garden that she sent me. This is near her pool. I know some of you are planting, you know, in small areas, and this was the only area that she had. And I love this picture because I think what she did, some of you have talked about putting in lavender, but what she has here is the nepeta, which is in the catmint family, and it's very easy to grow. It's a beautiful blue flower, and the pollinators love it. So it might be something that you consider instead of lavender, unless you're very attached to lavender. So I wanted you to see this photo, but I especially love the way this gardener has taken those 4 pretty ordinary but very attractive raised beds and lined them all up the way I call a cemetery garden. But she's put in height with the teepee that crosses the two, and then she's put in some little planters in the front, so it gives it a little bit more interest. I don't see a garden bench in there, but I'm sure I told her to put one in, so she will somewhere. But, you know, again, it has a lot of the elements, but it's just a very simple, very pretty, very productive raised bed garden. And then this is my garden, again, only on a nice day. It doesn't, you've seen now that it doesn't always look like this. This is the aerial view looking down into that space, and it's tiny. It really is a very small garden, but look how much I pack in there because I do a lot of layering. I have tomatoes and kale and cucumbers. Those are the things I always plant. Always put basil in. These are my wonderful alpine strawberries, and that little tree that was probably the first year that it was put in is now something that I think is too big and I need to take it out. So make it wild for all creatures, big and small, to thrive and survive. This looks like that same year that I was letting everything get a little bit too wild. But there's something wonderful about having plants that are all just, enjoying. It's like a big party. They're all just having a good old time. So, create environments where all the plants are happy. And this is a beautiful perennial garden leading into a neighbor's yard in an area where I used to live in my neighborhood. And I love the little entrance to the garden with the little sculpture. There's something that's very inviting about having something at the entrance that makes you want to go in. And this is one of my favorite plants, Sifugia. I think I'm saying that right. It's it's the cohosh family, and it's fragrant. And I think the other name for it is fairy wands, because if you've ever grown it, it's magnificent because it just sort of bounces in a very light wind, and it emits a honey scented aroma. And so I always put my bench when it's blooming. I always stick my bench right near it so I can sit and watch it and smell it. So you can move your bench around as you need to. And so again, just showing you some wonderful pictures of some really wild gardens, and how, it doesn't have to be precise and neat as I've instructed you to get it on your paper. The goal is to create a beautiful, beautiful habitat. So guess what? I've been talking so much, we're already at student work, and it's only 7 o'clock. Yay. So we're going to have plenty of time to talk about your work, which I'm excited for. And I'm going to open up the screen here a little bit. Okay, so I'm going to, and I'm hoping that you're going to talk about your work. So Magali, are you here? No?
Yeah.
Yes. Oh, good. And I probably am not pronouncing your name correctly.
It's Magali, but you're doing
Magali.
fine. Yes.
Magali, great, great, great. And we've been enjoying the process of watching your garden evolve. And did you add more to it? What have you done since last week?
So this was actually just to do the dimensions of the garden, which actually was a very important exercise. So measuring again very carefully, do I have enough room for this snail-like kind of design? And I do. Here I think let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I still have 12, but in my final design, I actually decided to have only 9 raised beds. So again, this basically custom raised bed that's made out of corten steel that would wrap around the path, and then having the water basin as a side element. So I've pared it down a little bit. I do have I didn't show the planters. I think originally I had 6 planters for dwarf fruit trees. So I've pared it down to 3. I'm adding more planters in the final design for the alpine strawberries, which you really piqued my curiosity, and I'm certainly gonna go for that. And then on the wall that is right next to the gate, so at the start of the path, I'm planning to do a vertical planter for herbs. So mainly basil, sage, rosemary, thyme, some edible flowers as well to, you know, basically have a little more variety. So it's mainly, you know, what I use in my cooking. I have the Japanese maple that is going to stay. It's just a, you know, beautiful piece. What I did want to mention, and I will have it in my write-up for the final submission, the raised beds, I really intend that to be not only functional to grow the vegetables, but also more as a sculptural element. Because it's made, it will be made out of this steel. So really have, you know, as the season wears off and there isn't, you know, the beautiful vegetables growing, that I still have, you know, if there's snow on the ground like we had this morning, it's almost like this piece of sculpture that I have, and it's, you know, basically right outside of my kitchen window. So that was my original intent here with the design.
Well, that's beautiful. Well, I'm really glad that you pointed out that you went out and measured it, because that really was the point of last week's exercise, and you just did a beautiful job. And it's interesting then that you found that there were things that you thought you were going to have in there, but you just didn't have room for that.
Yeah.
So that's really important. I can't remember, what do you have in there now? Do you have something you're going to have to remove in order to put this in?
Yeah, there's a conifer that is not doing well that I'm gonna have to remove. It's, you know, I already got a quote for that. It's like, what? It's gonna be expensive just to remove that tree. And then there's a water fountain right now, but it's the way it's set up, it really doesn't go well with the modern architecture of the house. So that's why I want to change that. And I'm also calling it my secret edible garden, because I'm gonna have this defense perimeter, so you can't really see it until you're in it. And hopefully the deer, I know they can't read labels and can't read it anyhow, but I'm really hoping that it's also to minimize. I know, I mean, I'll be able to completely eliminate, but at least minimize a little bit, you know, the damage that they would do.
Yeah, interesting. Well, I think you've just done a beautiful job. Does anybody else want to comment about the garden or have any questions?
I really like the spiral.
Thank you.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
really love this as well. I think it's so creative. I'm curious, Magali, on the outside of the path of the spiral, what is the base? Is it lawn? Is it some other thing that covers the ground? What
Yeah.
covers the ground there?
Yeah, thanks, Linda. That's a great question. I actually kept it for the very end. And I definitely want a, you know, pervious surface. So I'm thinking of doing gravel. So I'll have
Okay.
plantings, you know, all around, again, to soften the hardscape, but trying to do gravel that hopefully, you know, can, you know, keep the maintenance a little under control. I don't really want to do like wood chips, because I think it's gonna make it too rustic looking for the house. Again, you know, thinking about that very modern element. So I thought that the gravel, you know, locally sourced gravel would look best. But I'm really open to suggestions here.
And what is the path? What is the
Bluestone.
bluestone? Okay. Nice. It's beautiful. So creative. I love it.
In the final submission, I'll also have, like, I'm doing a very short slide deck. So I'll have like photos of, that inspired me to come up with this design.
Uh-huh.
So you guys will get to see what was in my head here to come up with this.
Oh, good.
I
Good.
have a thought. The design is absolutely gorgeous. I love spirals and like curved lines. And I love the cordon steel. That's such a great material to work with. Have you thought about adding like maybe some like grasses around the exterior of the spiral to kind of contribute to your idea of this sort of secret garden where it kind of conceals a little bit, but maybe perhaps adds movement and like maybe would help with some of the winter interest when the vegetable garden's done. And then you'd have like a combination of like the cordon steel playing off of like the tall seed heads from the grasses.
That's a great idea, because I wanted to do an evergreen hedge with a herbaceous layer with bulbs, but I think also adding grasses, because I keep I have grasses in the back of my garden right now, and I keep them, I only recently cut them. So it's like for the most of the winter, it provides a lot of winter interest, but I hadn't thought of adding that to the front. So that's a great idea. I love it. Thank you.
Sure.
Thanks, Brittany.
Of course.
Well, I think you've inspired all of us. And it's lovely.
Thank
We have
you.
to figure out how we're going to be able to see how we can share. We'll have to talk to Tim about this at the end, but how we can share our final design so everybody can see them. We're not going to have another class, so I don't know. Anyways,
I think on the assignment page, so we do the submission to the assignment section, but also there seems to be a place where we upload the documents so that everybody can see and, comment.
Yeah.
And I think that's what I saw earlier.
I'll check with Vanessa to see where we do that. Because that would be fun. It'd be great. And that maybe that's where we can use it as well. I don't know how long we have access to that particular site. But that's maybe where we can go in and continue to say, this is working for me, or this isn't working for me, or whatever. But we'll talk to Tim about that, or Vanessa. Thank you. This is really great. I'm gonna
Thank
just gonna
you.
say, and then you also did your garden tool. Some of
Yes.
you, so I had to say when I went in Sunday afternoon to get some of the pictures off the site, there only like 2 of you or 3 of you had done anything. And then I went in this afternoon and like there was like lots of work that was sort of backed up a little bit from tools and compost and other things. So it's a little bit of a mishmash, but you did this beautifully too, the what you have. Did you actually lay this all out and you took a photograph of it? Is
Yeah,
that what
yeah. I put it, this is all on my my patio table. Yeah, that's where we eat,
I'm
Yes.
so impressed. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, but you asked, my husband asked the same question. He said, did you put everything on the table? I said, yeah. You know?
Well, you did a great job. So these are some of your favorite things. Your weeding sickle. That's an interesting thing. Where did you get that? I don't know
So
anything
this
about
is,
it.
I'm very inspired by gardens mainly in Japan. And so I have a couple of tools that sickle that is very sharp, actually. You've got to be really careful. And I use it for like really small areas. What I use the most is really the Hori Hori. It is an incredible tool that is just, it can do just so very much with it. I just got them at my local nursery center.
I have the same knife, and it is my favorite gardening tool as well. It's fantastic. It has, you can cut, it's got that serrated edge that you can cut things with if you need to. It's really pretty heavy duty.
Yeah,
Mhm.
same here. That's a good one.
I have it too.
It's great for splitting plants. Like it works great on hostas.
Hmm. That's good. And you recommend this Schneebauer, which I think is very good, and Virgin and Ball. So these are all wonderful ideas. And look at your nice compost area.
Mhm.
Great.
Yep.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, I feel like we're all learning from each other, and this has been wonderful. Great work.
Thank you.
Nancy, are you with us? Maybe not. So we talked about this design last time, and I think what Nancy added were some garden things that she's going to get, just sort of the checklist of stuff, and it all looks great. All right, next, Robert. This is fun. I love seeing your properties and how you're putting these designs in. Look at all your bird feeders. What else do you have in there, Robert? What's this thing? Oh, that's a bird feeder.
That's another bird feeder. Yeah. There's one or two that are outside the picture even too, and then you can see my kind of wildflower area garden and things off to the right, and then the rain garden to the left. So I'm trying to do that. The rewilding the front yard pretty much.
Yeah. What is this hanging on the trees here?
Oh, those were just Christmas lights. Still, I haven't taken them down yet.
Oh, now you have the perfect yard where you can put a thing up that says this is an art garden, and you get all your neighbors to want to do the same thing.
And those are actually apple trees lining the driveway. Apple and a couple pear trees and a peach tree as well to
Nice.
lining that. And then you can kind of see to the right hand side is the green lid, which is the unsightly septic lid, but on top of that is a bird bath.
Nice. I think, I had a couple
Yeah,
pictures.
yeah, that'll show it. Yeah.
Yeah. So you're really shaking up this little suburban neighborhood, aren't you? Making it real nice.
Yeah, I'm more in I'm actually in an agricultural area. I'm surrounded by farms and things and such. So it kind of fits in there. I think I don't have as much of the shake up to do, but certainly something different than the traditional just lawn
Yeah.
and nothing else.
Yeah. And so this is, you went out and you measured, and this is then which I think is a great way to do it, is to actually have a photograph and then just put it in. So, but it matches what you designed.
Yes.
It's great. Let me just see if I have another photo. Oh yeah. And then you did,
All
I
the list of tools. Yeah.
I didn't put your plan in. I know we did your plan last time, but I don't think I got it in.
Yeah. I didn't do an updated one for this week. So.
Oh, okay. But it's good for us to visualize how that goes. It's great. Are you getting excited? Are you going to get it started soon?
I am the seeds are going to my right. You're getting my tomato plants, and the peppers are already popping up. And
Oh, good. And then you show this system. Is this really your system? Is this you?
yes, that's mine. It's one of the famous tools from Gardener Supply, that the little hanging tool organizer there for the small hand tools. Ones on the left are ones I have actually in my office in my seed starting area right now, so I can keep the plants trimmed as need be and things, and get them trimmed as they grow. So,
That's nice. That's great. And then are these yours too?
yes, they are.
Wow.
And I've been collecting tools, some useful, some not, but over the years I've kind of no pun intended, weeded out some of the less useful tools things.
Uh-huh.
One of the things that I actually love for even for planting is actually the trenching shovel, because it has that nice, I can get down nice and deep fairly easily. My ground is fairly hard and compacted, so trying to get down deep with just the rounded shovel is tough, but that trenching shovel does really well.
Yeah. So how are you going to get all that turf grass out? What's your plan?
I've got a couple different ways of doing it. One would be trying to get some of the cardboard and doing the layering like that. Option number two is my neighbor's a farmer. In fact, he actually plows my main garden, so he might even just come. He's offered to come and just plow that up, not till up, but the actual the deep plowing to get things turned over really well. So.
Good. Good. Because I was going to say, you can take this shovel right here. Can you see my pointer? And
Yep.
cut off all the turf grass. Edge it around and at least just get the grass out of there, and then you can churn it up, because you don't want to have
Right.
the grass churned up necessarily.
Correct.
And then this is your seed starting. This is where your tomatoes and everything are going right now?
Yep, they are. Yeah, in this picture, the bottom one shelf up from the bottom that actually has the light turned on
Uh-huh.
is what's currently growing. I've put some more in over the weekend, so I have I have 3 shelves going now. So
Wow.
added
Wow.
an eggplant because it's not just for the kitchen garden, but it's for the main garden, and I'm opening up a little kind of roadside stand to sell some of the plants and veggies and things too, since I always
Oh.
grow more than I need. So,
I don't think we've heard about the other veggie garden. I think this is new news.
yeah, that's what I'm calling my main. I mean, I grow corn and about 30 sets of canning tomatoes for making spaghetti sauces and things like that. So it's more than just the intimate. That's the one. It's the straight rows going up and down and
Huh.
so, yeah.
Interesting. Interesting. Well, you're going to be busy, aren't you?
Oh yes.
It looks good. Well, best of luck to you. I think it's great. Very
Thank you.
inspired.
What zone are you in? I'm curious because I've been chomping at the bit to start my seeds, and I'm afraid I'm too early.
Well, yeah, we're now zone 7. I'm southeast Pennsylvania. I mean, we used to be
Okay.
6, but they've moved us to 7 now. So
I'm in 5B, so
You got a little ways. I know, me too. Well, great job. Great job, Bob.
thank you.
Good work. Caroline, are you with us?
I am. Can you hear me?
I can. Now, you submitted more photos of your yard, but this is the only one I put in because I was afraid we wouldn't have time to see them all. But this is great. This is this little area right here, right? This is the
Correct.
table.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. So we can see how it all fits, sort of swoops around. It looks lovely. What is this wonderful room here?
So again, this is like an 1880. This house was built in 1880. I'm in central New Jersey, and it's a 16-room inn, a B&B. So that round room you're pointing at is our dining room area. So there's about at least 8 windows that go and look around the property a little bit. But you see we have a fence right next to it, so you can't look that far. So I got to use my vertical space, and then we want to eventually we've been starting some garden tea parties with another partner vendor here, and so it's my job to beautify our garden and just add some more visual interest and, like I said, texture and aromatherapy kind of things. So it looks bleak because we're dead of winter, and then we just got like 8 inches of snow today, so that made it look really beautiful actually. It's all dead, but
I'm
yeah, so
sorry, I can't blow this picture up anymore, but you have, you're mixing in ornamentals with edibles, and is that what your plan is?
exactly, yes. And again, next to that fence line, I want to do like some of the raised beds that you're seeing, those boxes there, and multi-leveled. So again, for different visitors or for me or for the staff or whoever to, come out and be able to tend and have a little, workshop or pull some weeds if they must, but to just enjoy the space.
Nice. Nice. So how do you feel about this? Are you happy with it? Is it something that you're excited to plant, or what did your plan?
Well, everything takes time and money. So I need to, I'll probably do it in phases. Because in fact, last year I did a lot more of the foundational planting, and I know you can't see in the pictures, but there's different hydrangeas. I've got some spirea that, have all lost their leaves, so you can't really make those out. I've planted a lot of different bulbs, the narcissus, and I did a bunch of allium, so I'm of all different heights. So I'm kind of excited to see how those pop out. I've got a few oak leaf hydrangeas on this far side where coming at us where the table is. So to kind of block from the street, because there is a street and a walkway there. So I want that to grow up bigger. So now I want to come back in and do a few edibles, a few herbs, so I think it's just going to be a phase kind of thing. So I do have some pollinating things, but I'm thinking the raised bed's going to be like my first plan of attack.
Right. And so how is your soil, do you think? Because, it's a little hard. I think one of the problems with mixing ornamentals with edibles is that they sometimes have different soil requirements, and sometimes the ornamentals will be a little hungry for fertilizer. So what are your thoughts
Mm.
about for getting the soil
Well,
prepped?
my first thought is it's super rocky. We live at my town is called Summit, and it's because it's on a summit of a hill. So when I start digging anywhere, and in fact you can see it under the magnolia, those are some of the rocks that get pulled out of the soil, and we just created a little barrier bed around that magnolia tree. So yeah, there's some needs. That's why I was kind of doing it in phases, just to see how, some of the shrubs. I mean, everything has been really good so far. I haven't tested it this year, but it seems rich enough right now. That's why I think I still want to do either big barrels or the raised bed, so I can control the soil
Yeah. Yeah.
for that.
My immediate thought when I see your design is that it would be, and knowing that this is for an inn, is that it'd be really neat for you to design little plant labels so your guests can see what things are. And because you clearly have a very distinct style that's very artistic. And I think it would add a lot to the experience if you could keep that theme going of
Okay.
educating and sharing and showing, because it could be very cute.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's a perfect idea. Sure, I can do that.
Does anybody else want to say anything about Caroline's design? Thoughts?
Can I ask what the green round with circles are over on the right side? So it would be on the right side of the table as we're looking at it, what those
Mhm.
plants are? Yeah,
Yeah.
those.
Okay, so that's over by the staircase. Those are, you can see the big one in the back touching the window. Those are rhododendrons, actually.
Oh, I see. Okay.
And then the smaller one to the front is an azalea. So, so those are my foundational.
Got it.
Yeah.
I love the stippling in the I think the walking path. It looks really like the way that you portrayed I don't know. I think it looks really good.
Oh, thank you, hon. Appreciate it.
Yeah, it has a fluidity that's very nice. It's not rigid. It's nice. The way you've done these little archways and the little paths into there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, I love my artwork too. Like you can barely see it, but there's a hanging bird feeder. I do have like little flag post. I have a bird bath. We have other little bird houses scattered. I have a windmill kind of ornament that blows in the wind. So
Nice.
I'm always adding some kind of whimsical.
That's
artwork
good.
too.
That's great. Yeah, well, keep it going. It's great.
Thank you.
Good. You might get more benches in there too somewhere.
Well, you're right. I could.
Just a thought. All right, I'm gonna just keep going because I don't know, I don't really remember how many more we have, but good work. Very nice. Kelly, are you here? I think you are.
I'm here.
All right, so oops, I wanted to put in, and I meant to put in, but you've come a long way. Like you just started with a basic box, right? I mean, you had no idea that this was going to happen.
It's true.
It just kind of like evolved, and it's so pretty. I remember looking at this from last time. Some of you had a lot of photos, and I just could only use a few. But what did you learn from last class that you might have changed? Did you go out and measure anything?
Well, I had measured it to begin with, so I knew the sizes,
Okay, good.
and the two boxes along the bottom and the archway exist
Okay.
already in the garden. So, and I had just decided I was going to leave those where they were, and then kind of went from there. So I think the real evolution in this case was I had to figure out where I was going to put a compost bin, which honestly, I don't know that I would actually put a compost bin right there, but sort of for the purposes of the exercise, I was like, okay, this is where I would put it if I needed to put it in this space. I have a compost bin. It's like across the yard on the other side. It doesn't get enough sun. Like in hindsight, I should have picked a sunnier spot.
This is your compost here?
No, it's the little square thing with like the
This
graph.
thing?
looking thing on the bottom left.
Oh, I'm
Sorry,
sorry.
I can't figure out which.
Bar, that's this area?
Yes, yeah.
Oh, okay. Oh, good. Oh,
So-
interesting. Interesting.
I borrowed from what my husband actually put together for me when we first made my compost bin, which he just found a metal gate and put that as the lid. So you can
Huh.
still get rain and sun and all that kind of stuff in there, but it's a small enough mesh that not too many critters crawl in there. I'm sure some do, but they have to be on the small end.
So at the
Um,
moment, you don't have any of, you just have this area here, and now you're just adding, you have these trees too,
No,
right?
I don't have anything basically from like
Huh?
mostly just the stuff along the bottom and the archway. That's all I have currently
Well,
existing.
That'll be
um,
fun to see you put this in.
I'm most excited about the hedge idea. I've never had a hedge. I don't know the first thing about what I'm doing, but I'm kind of excited to try.
And this is the hedge here?
Yeah.
And
I
what
want it
did
to
you,
be blueberry, but I don't know if that's gonna work, but that's what I'd like. If not, then maybe like, I don't know, mulberry or something like that. I do have mulberries in my yard, so
Did we
they
talk
are quite
about this?
happy.
did we talk about this last time, your hedge? I can't
We
remember.
talked a little bit about the blueberries, yes.
So does anybody want to pipe in about recommendations for Kelly and her hedge?
How tall do you want that hedge to get eventually?
I would like to sit in the little chairs and not see my neighbor's second story deck if I could. So I'd kind of like it to be a little taller.
So like 6 to 8 feet, maybe?
Yeah, something like that.
So it would take a long time, but I actually love using inkberry for hedges.
Hmm.
It's a native evergreen shrub. The females produce berries for birds,
Yeah, okay.
and it's a really pretty leaf. And it's a
Ah.
native shrub, so
Yeah,
That's a
that would
great
be
idea.
cool.
Inkberry, perfect idea. Yeah.
We've been using junipers. I think it's called Skyrocket at my work recently, and it's been going very well. They're very tough and beautiful.
This is a pretty common one, but the giant green arborvitae, those do well for screening year round.
And they grow fast.
Yeah.
And you can trim them into shapes too, which is nice.
Yeah.
yeah, and you can use their greens on Christmas for decorating.
There you go.
The same goes for magnolia, actually, the southern magnolia.
Oh, that's a great idea too, yeah.
They're
Oh, that
very
is a good
expensive,
one.
but they're very lovely.
Yeah, you could get the little gem. The little gem ones are like smaller than than like the typical ones. I've got one in my yard. It grows fast and it does provide really good screening.
There's little gem, and there's also a cute little one that's called teddy bear.
Ooh. Magnolia?
Yeah, teddy bear magnolia. It has a more of a rounded leaf than little gem, but they're both super pretty.
Huh.
Kelly, what zone are you?
I am now 7B, I think, with the changes.
Yeah, you should be fine with teddy bear is people will tell you that sometimes in like 5, 6, they have some issues with it. But I think 7, it does just fine. Question for you: is there any kind of fruiting trees, apple trees, serviceberry, anything like that in your proximity or in your garden?
Not anymore. We had an apple tree. There are cherry trees in the neighborhood. I don't have one. I would like one, but I don't have one.
It won't be that. The reason I say that is I don't, junipers often, there's an issue with a pathogen called cedar apple rust, that it's a weird pathogen that will jump from the juniper to the fruit tree. It doesn't hurt the tree, but it wrecks the fruit. So that's the only consideration if you wanted to plant junipers, which is an awesome tree.
Yeah, we lost our apple tree to a sapsucker. It just came back year after year after year.
Oh. So what does anybody think about blueberries that Kelly originally wanted to put in?
The ones that I had were low. I don't, there might be other varieties, but mine didn't grow more than a couple feet tall.
You have to make
Interesting.
sure the soil is really acidic and well draining. Otherwise, they don't do well.
Yeah.
Also, make sure you have several different varieties. You get a much better fruit set if they can. And there are all kinds of recommendations online about plant this one with this one with this one.
That's really good. I've never heard that before, but that makes a lot of sense. I always assumed it was just so that you get a long harvest, but probably you're right. They'd like to have a different staggering.
This is what I've been told. I have two blueberries in a pot, so that's the sum total of, because I don't get a lot of sun, so it's the sum total of my experience. But I have been told that by several people that they need, you need a couple varieties, like one or like two or three kind of thing.
I've heard that as well, so.
Yeah, the only other problem with the blueberries is they lose their leaves in the winter, so then you lose your screening. So it depends on, I guess, what your priority is. If screening's a priority, that might not be the best option for a hedge.
Good point. So Kelly, gives you lots to think about.
Yep.
Now, have you done a final planting plan about what you wanted to put in here? I mean, not that you have to, but do you have your list? Can't
I do
remember.
have my list
Okay.
from last week, so it's sort
You
of
have it.
assembling.
Okay, great. No, I mean, it's evolving. I'm just asking. That's great.
Yeah.
Good. Well, keep going. Looks great. Nice
Thank you.
work. Very, very pretty drawing. Linda, you sent this photo from this morning. You with us today? Oh, are you here, Linda?
Sorry, I'm on mute. Yeah, we got snow finally for the first time in like 2 years. Oh my God. But
So
it
you were
was,
happy. You were happy with it?
I love snow. Winter without snow is just dull and boring and muddy and dreary and lousy. But the weird thing is it was pouring rain all night last night, and it didn't turn to snow till like 6 in the morning. Others in this area, I don't know if you experienced the same thing, but it's very weird. But anyway, we got maybe 4 or 6 inches, and a lot of it's melted already, but whatever, I'll take it.
Yeah, well, it sure makes the backyard look pretty. And I loved how you put this in. A lot of you, by the way, sent me very nice long notes, and I read them all, and it was really great to have a little perspective on things. And so thank you. And I liked what you said, Linda, that this shows how important structure is in the garden. And
Yeah.
Do you want to talk a little bit more about that? This is the only one. I know you had another shot with the chairs in it and stuff, but I liked seeing the
Yeah.
bird bath.
So this shot is, I'm standing literally right outside my kitchen door, looking to the right. And this is my herb garden. This is the main area that I've been focusing on in terms of design. But when there's nothing there in the winter, when you're just looking at the soil, it all just kind of blends in together. But when it's snowing, you can really see the structural elements. So, my focal point, the bird bath, and then off behind that, the fence, which is my boundary. To the right, my bay window, which has the window seat next to it, it's almost like my bird blind. I love sitting there and looking out. Coming around to where that chair is, that's the beginning of my patio, and I can look to my herb garden. I can also look the other way and see my cutting garden and the rest of my yard. And then that tree that's all the way on the left, you can see there's a bird feeder hanging from there. I have several other feeders and bird houses all in there. And it's just really kind of a complete picture there's no plants, there's no nothing, but those are just kind of the bones of my garden that
Hmm.
I think it's important to me. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
And it looks like you have a good hedgerow between your house and your neighbor's house.
Yeah, that neighbor's house, you can see the red behind is very close. It's probably, I don't know, 30 feet. It's very, very close, but there's a bunch of yews that are very old, so they've grown very tall. And to the left, you can't see it in this photo, but there's a giant spruce tree. So there's a lot of evergreen right there that is it's a wonderful screen for the neighbor, but also it's a great habitat area because there are all kinds of critters and birds and everything just live in there. And to
Mm.
sit in my window seat at that bay window, it's just like being in a little nature preserve. It's wonderful with all these houses so close around. It's really nice.
That's great. And it even looks like there's like this is an evergreen here. I was gonna say, it looks like a rhododendron, but that's good. You see, now that's all about the rewilding. You're having your own space, but you're also allowing the critters to have their space as well.
Right. Yep. And I just love watching them.
That's
And
great.
I have a wonderful pair of opera glasses that I bought at an auction that sit in my little window seat area that when I see something really interesting, I can put my little binoculars up and spy on them. It's really fun.
Well, this is great to see. I'm gonna go to the next slide because what I also loved is you showed your early basic structure.
Yeah.
And then you developed it more, I think, and then one more there. So I just thought that this was a wonderful transition to see how this goes. Now, is that in this area here? Is that what this
Yes.
is?
Yep. Yep. And so I've had a really hard time because this is a very small area. It's much smaller than your garden, Ellen, but to kind of figure out what to put where. And through the process of this course, I've realized that if you go back 2 slides to that basic structure, whoops,
Sorry, I'm going the wrong way. There.
one more, there. So it finally dawned on me, this is really very simple. So that circle in the middle is my bird bath. And all I need to do is have 4 triangles in the middle that are my planting area. And then 4 long ovals on the edge. And those long ovals can be low, very bushy things that will be good for kind of a border. And then taller things with larger leaves can be sort of in that middle area. And if I group them together, because was my problem before, I just would put stuff randomly. But if I group things together in those triangles, it will have a much nicer aesthetic. And then I also have 2 very nice metal obelisks, also that I got at an auction. I have a wonderful auction that I get a lot of good garden stuff from. That will be, and they're very whimsical. They're really cute. So they could be some nice, structural elements as well. But the more, I kept refining and what am I going to plant and where am I going to plant it? And I thought, let's just go back to the basic here. And it's just the triangles and the long ovals and that centerpiece.
That's great. And the ovals are incorporated in the big design, in the whole design there. So they're not like separate beds.
Right. Yeah. Those ovals is everything along the edge. So you see number 11 on the bottom, number 8, 4 and 6 on the right, 16 on the top. There's long rows of low bushy stuff.
Yeah.
Parsley, thyme, mustard, leafy greens, whatever.
So you're packing a lot in a very small space. It's going to be lovely.
Well, we'll see if it fits. On paper it works, but we'll see if it fits there. And you know what? Before I go, I do have one question that you don't have to answer it right now, but at some point before the end of the night. So my garden's very small, smaller than yours, but when this stuff is blank in the winter, do you bother putting a cover crop on these areas?
No, don't bother. Just
Okay.
make sure the soil is good and you keep it weeded. Should be fine.
Okay,
I only do because I have water runoff on mine. You know, I have, if I have a lot of, if I have flooding,
okay.
but, yeah. I mean, compost wouldn't hurt, but I don't think you need to do a cover crop.
Okay, yeah, I do put compost on, but I just didn't know if I also needed a cover crop.
No, well,
I've never done that.
I'm so glad this was helpful, that it brought clarification. It's
It
great.
really did. You know, it was already there. And in the beginning of the course, I thought, oh, gee, I don't really need this. I already have my kitchen garden defined, but oh my God, it's given so much clarity. It's
Oh, good.
pattern. It's all about pattern. And that has really helped.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
And variety. I love the way you're going to put the trellises in, your antique trellises.
Yeah.
Those-
Yeah.
Those are really pretty.
Yeah.
Great. Does anybody else have anything to say or comment? I'd like to know what you're doing. Are you putting in like edging here? Is that what this is? Because I think that's kind of cool.
There is an edging already there. I didn't draw it in on this version. It's been on previous versions that I've submitted, but I just have sort of small rocks that I've collected in the woods. And so rocks sort of line the entire garden.
Yeah, that's pretty.
And it has to be that little indentation because on each corner, because you see in the bottom right, I don't have it labeled, but just to the left of the, yeah, right there are Bilco doors into the basement. And so I had to work around that somehow. Like I couldn't come out to a square corner because I'd run into the Bilco doors.
Oh, interesting. Well, it looks very nice. It's different. It's good.
Yeah, it works.
And if you actually wanted to put more on, you could put a little pot. You could put your whiskey barrels or something in the corners there.
Yeah.
Just to give it one more thing.
Yeah. I definitely do have one more thing disease, so I have to be careful about that.
All right. Well, I think it's great. Good work. Thank you,
Thank
Linda. Thank you. Nicole, are you with us?
Yes, I'm here.
Hi.
So I divided the garden. It's roughly 10 feet wide by 16 feet long, roughly. And every year I'm overly ambitious. I plant too much. It becomes nothing but a weed garden. And I just need some direction on how to really get a design, implement it, and have an actual harvest in the fall. So I decided to divide it among three areas. So one is like an herb garden, medicinal herbs. One is a tea garden, and then one is just strictly vegetables. But I don't know how this will work in the long run because of the crop rotation that you taught us about. So if I'm strictly keeping it these subject gardens, I don't know how to do the crop rotation without changing the, the theme of each garden. But I think at least with this plan, at least I can get something going, and we'll see how it turns out.
I love it. I would love a garden like this. It does feel very organized, and you're covering 3 areas that you really like. I don't think you have to worry about the rotation because nothing's going to bother your herbs. Your tea garden is mostly herbs as well. So this is just the vegetable garden, right? And you're putting
Yes.
in, what are these big things in the
So
center?
the big ones down the center, I try to do all tall things vertically down the center of each row. So each row is 4 by 10. So the far right is just tomatoes, and then the middle tea garden, I actually incorporated cherry tomatoes in the center, and then the far left medicinal herb garden in the center, I believe those are rosemary. But I love evergreens, and I don't know how to really incorporate evergreens because my space is so tiny to work with. But I have rosemary, so at least that's some evergreen in there. But I don't like a bare garden in the winter. I don't like it.
Yeah. Well, you'll figure that out. This is a great place to start. When I'm looking at this, I'm thinking, have you done it on graph paper so you know how many plants you're going to need? Because some of these are going to be plants you're going to want to buy, and some you can start from seed. And so this is either put it on graph paper so you know how many plants you need, or do the thing with the hats and the gloves so you can figure out. Like I'm looking at all of this and I'm going, what is this? I don't know what these yellow and red things are, but it looks like a lot of plants.
Yes, those are zinnias and marigolds.
Yeah. And they're probably a little too close for that many plants, so you might
Yeah.
reduce it. But again, you can do that on paper to really figure it out, so you don't overbuy what you need or underbuy.
Yeah, and I typically do sunflowers along the top edge every year, and they actually reseed and come back. So I haven't even had to really replant my sunflowers. We've had such mild winters for like the
Yeah.
past 5 years. It hasn't been hard enough for them not to come back. And then on the very far left, I want to do some kind of berry patch, but it's on the outside of the garden. So I was thinking either blueberries or elderberries. But
Uh-huh.
the left side of the garden is my septic. So I'm always concerned about the roots and how, they would invade that area.
I don't think that blueberries that was a good tip about the blueberries. If you want that many blueberry plants to have a variety of them. I mean, I love a mixed hedge. You could put in maybe elderberries and blueberries. I don't think that they have such a huge root system that it would be a problem.
Okay.
Anybody else want to pipe in here?
I have a question about your evergreen dilemma. Depending on what zone you're in,
7B.
Oh, then it's the same as where I am. I still have kale going.
Okay.
And that gives you like a really nice structural element in the winter.
Okay.
Green, it gets really leggy and tall, and you can keep harvesting it even now.
Good to know. Thank you.
Tanya, that's an excellent suggestion. Yeah. And there's different kinds of kale too. So you can do that red kale, which I think is a little hardier than the lanceolato, the blue Tuscan kale, or that green frilly kale. But what a great idea, especially if you're in 7B. I mean, mine are decimated by now, but that's excellent.
I've been amazed, and we still have pansies going, and that's a really good combination if you want to have a little bit of color in the garden in the winter, to have kale and pansies planted together, or some kind of a viola. Those flowers are edible as well.
And I have a lot of my main pest pressure is moles, squash bugs, and snails. And I don't like to use chemicals, so I've done the diatomaceous earth. And anyways, if anybody has suggestions on snails and slugs, I keep getting those every year.
Chickens.
Chickens. Yes, I have chickens, but I can't let them loose because my dogs will kill them. So I got to figure something out.
Yeah, no. I don't know. Does anybody have any? That's a whole nother topic, I guess.
Frogs, like if you can put a pond, like a small pond in somewhere, like even if it's little, like if you can have a water source, if you attract frogs in, we had the worst time with slugs and snails. And we developed this pond feature in our yard, and I don't know how they find it, but they do. And so we didn't have any frogs or amphibians in our yard prior to having the pond, and had a horrendous snail and slug problem. And we still have slugs and snails, but it is much more manageable now that we've got frogs and lizards and all sorts of other amphibians in our yard.
Have you noticed if the water feature attracted snakes?
We have like rat snakes, but we back onto the woods, so they would be there regardless. But having the snakes isn't terrible. I mean, we've only ever seen like maybe one or two, and they're like, we've got the rat snakes and then the garter snakes. But yeah, no, I haven't seen more than one or two of them ever.
Okay. Thank you.
Sure.
Great idea. Yeah. The only other thing for slugs that I've seen is that I don't know what you're doing for beds or edging on this, but there is a copper tape that you can get on that you can put on top of a, along the edge. And for some reason, they don't like crawling across that.
Okay. Yeah. I just have railroad ties. That's how I divide my beds. So where do I get the copper tape from?
I think you get it. I'm sure Gardener Supply has it.
Okay.
Has anybody else had copper tape? Use that?
I haven't used copper tape, but I've heard you can use eggshells around the base of your plants, and then they don't want to go across the eggshells. Like if you crush them up really small.
Okay.
That's what that diatomaceous earth does too. all, apparently it's very sharp. Well, great job, Nicole. Keep going. Looks
Thank
good.
you. Thank you.
Roma, I love your design. I want to make a puzzle out of it. It would make a great jigsaw puzzle.
You're very sweet. Drawing does not come easily to me, so the more practice I get, the better.
Oh, you've done so much.
I also have a very small space, and I very much relate to the fitting it all in. That will be the view from my patio. If you're sitting on the patio, that's sort of what it's.
I wanted to show this because nobody else has done a drawing like this of how you see it. And I love that. Love that. It's so great.
Well, thank you. I can't, we are actually north of where our home is skiing. So I can't be home to measure my garden. So that was sort of my, okay, I can't measure it. I did measure it when we were home before I kind of came up with this design. It will fit. It's going to be tight and there's going to be a lot in it. So it'll be a work in progress. I have tried to divide between things that I really like. The only thing that my husband likes, as we've said, is iceberg lettuce, which is in there, and tomatoes. So I've tried to do that. I also try to include, I don't have deer. I'm very lucky. We live in a very, very small, tightly packed neighborhood. I'm lucky that I don't have deer. We have, however, tons and tons of bunnies and squirrels and what have you. So I've sort of utilized things that have worked to a degree in the past. As far as I've put some bells in the garden. My squirrels don't like bells. So, that works sometimes. I've tried to plant some things like the lavender and the marigolds and some basils, very aromatic basils that will hopefully help to some degree, but that's going to be, that'll be my primary issue, is dealing with small furry creatures as far as pests are concerned. My stretch plants, I'm looking at some 9-star broccoli, and I want to give this Chinese artichoke, because I love artichokes, but I really don't have room for it. And supposedly this has a real artichoke taste. So that would be something new and a stretch. I wanted to ask you, I've not done a lot of seed starting because we're often somewhere skiing. So this is not a great time for me to be home nurturing seedlings. What are some things, I assume the lettuces and the carrots, I can direct sow. I will likely purchase the peppers and the tomatoes as plants already. What about the beans? I've chosen 3 beans. Is that something that I should try to find as a plant, or no?
Direct sow them, because beans don't like to, they have very sensitive roots and they don't want to be.
So they don't like to, and that's true of carrots as well, isn't it? I've never grown carrots before.
Yeah.
Okay, so when I'm sowing these in the garden, what is kind of your ratio? Do you follow the packets, or what is your methodology? Do you follow the packets pretty strictly about how many seeds per, per dibble, per row, that kind of thing? Because I've never done this before. Most of my gardening is flowers, and most of them are native.
Well, it looks like what you're probably going to do is run a planting line across each one of these pizza things. So just do a row, and I just I tend to put more in. If you're doing lettuce, I just sprinkle a whole row in, and then it comes up, and then I'll thin it out.
And then you thin it out, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Beans, you'd probably want to put a few inches across. You'd probably want to make sure that they were fairly. But the germination on a lot of plants is usually a lot of seeds is about 80%. So if you give them too much room, then you're going to not have a plant. It's better to have too much and then thin it out. Is my theory.
Yeah. No. Take that into account.
Yeah. Same with carrots. You're going to want to thin those out for sure.
Right. The carrot, in my understanding, I think seemingly somewhere I read that carrots also, because it's a root vegetable, don't like to be moved. So direct sowing is the best way
They
to go
do
with
not.
those.
Very
Okay.
sensitive. Yeah.
Yeah.
And they take a long
Um,
time to germinate, so just be patient.
Be
you're gonna-
patient.
Yeah.
Well,
That's great.
isn't that what gardening is a step into the unknown. So I'm excited.
Good, good. That sounds great. Thank you, Roma. You've done a beautiful job.
Thank you.
Very
I appreciate
nice.
it.
Very nice. And I think this is a super drawing. I love it.
Thank
If
you.
I had one more class, I would have everybody draw their garden from this angle. All right. I don't know how many more we have, but it's a little bit past 8. So I think we're getting close to the end. I'm not sure. Rosalind, are you here?
Yeah. Hi.
And you're Roz. Okay. So you sent me a note about that you didn't have. Did you have another thing in here that said what you actually, oh, so what I put in here is your first design. Okay, so let's just look at this quickly. And I love the way you added these little pictures. It was really good. But this was your first design, and then this was your second design.
Yeah.
And this is where you do have things planted in there. So I was wrong. I just didn't see that. I love that.
Oh,
And
okay. Yeah.
and then you did this. So I don't know where I put that comment. It might have been in an earlier class or something like that. So if you want, I don't know. I apologize, but this is great. Look at this. It looks like every time I look at this, this looks like a little castle or something, but I have to, we're looking down at
It's
it.
supposed to be a door. But yeah,
it's
there's
so
supposed to
pretty.
be a
It's just, you've done such a good job here, and you've just done everything just right, because you have only 11 varieties, but look at how full your garden is. It's just great.
Oh, thank you. Well, we'll see. I've heard that putting it on paper is easier than putting it in the garden. So we'll see how it goes. I wanted to do like a fence around the majority of it, just so I have chickens and dogs that love to dig. So I'm hoping to save what I can on the inside.
And is this your first garden, Ross?
Yes, at home. Well, we've tried things in the past, but it was mostly like tomatoes, which are really easy to grow here. We have really hot summers in Indiana, so it just comes down to things getting crispy, and tomatoes, I feel like they can't be killed by anything, I feel like. So
Well, what you've chosen here is all pretty standard stuff, so it should do really well. Do you have a source of water too, so you'll be able to water things?
yeah, I do have a sprinkler. It just comes down to making the time to water it.
Yeah. Well, and is this going to fit in a nice flat area? Because I don't remember seeing pictures of your backyard. You haven't really sent that yet, but is this going to fit?
Yes, it will. I did have to take out a couple of like there's the blue, well, I believe I put in, there's raspberry and blueberry shrubs. It's gonna be really close, really tight, and I kind of wanted some more walking space just to work with, to be able to like get in the beds and work. But we will see if I need to remove those shrubs. Yes, everything else fit.
Well, it's great. It's great. I look forward to seeing progress and seeing how you do it. Again, I just think, look at this. I just think it's beautiful how you've set this up. And that's the fence and the gate kind of area that you were thinking of.
Yes. Yeah.
Great.
Yeah. Thank you.
Does anybody else want to pipe in here? I don't know. All right. So Amanda, are you here? Good job, Ross. It looks great.
I'm here.
You're here. Oh, good. And you sent me a lot. You sent me like a whole PDF. Let me just see. I don't know what I put in. I put in a little bit. You put in pictures.
Yeah.
I put all these pictures because I thought it was great what you did. Because
Well, that's not mine.
This one's not yours?
No.
Oh, okay. So this is yours.
Yeah.
And this is yours.
Yeah.
And
No.
then I guess I missed because maybe you put in so much that I completely missed your design. I'm so sorry. I'll have to go.
No, that's okay. No, you had the design. I don't know it, but I did a lot more looking at inspirational things. And then when I actually staked everything out, it's hard to deal with the bank and the swale. And so I just kind of rearranged things. And that's what, the line drawing I sent, it was actually a PowerPoint because I had too many copies.
But
Yeah.
this is yours.
Yeah.
This is yours, right? So this is really the assignment that we had for last week was measure it out. And so you're trying it in this is the 2 different areas you're working with?
Well, also I'll have the 4 beds to rotate them. So there's going to be 2 on the bank, and I added a little more on the bank, and then 2 where it's a little more level. But I had to I had to have one moving farther because of the swale. Sometimes the water will be like 2-3 feet wide that runs through there toward the gate. And the bed I have in now will come out. I mean, it's starting to fall apart anyway. So
the one that's here right here.
Yeah.
But it's nice. It's a nice little bed.
Yeah, and there's one right up against the house that I put in last year, but did not work well because the raised bed soil I got was horrible.
So have you thought about doing something that's maybe not like, look at this natural curve that could go like that?
Yeah, my first design, I had curves and I didn't like it, but where the old bed is, in the new design is going to be more of a free-form pollinator garden. And then I put pollinator garden up. That bank goes up and then back down again.
Oh,
it's a challenge, and it has a sharp point.
Right?
Yeah, that's in the swale where you're pointing now. That's the swale.
Yeah.
And then it goes up and you can see the line of the fence where it peaks and then it goes back down again.
Oh, yes, I do see that now. Oh, interesting.
Yeah, it's a little challenging.
Yeah.
There's a lot of water that comes through there when it rains heavy. So like a little river.
Yeah. Huh.
Because it keeps on going under the fence down through the front, and then the street drain is there. So I don't know.
You haven't quite figured it out yet.
It's challenging. It's just challenging. There's nothing I can do about it. I can't change the water direction,
If you make like a water garden, like a rain garden there, and just do 2 beds for now, and then do a rain garden and see if that prevents the water from being in this flat area where you have your old beds. Just as like a
maybe
staging stage garden.
That possibly. Yeah, I have to think that through a little bit.
Well, I hope you've gotten some ideas from this class, so just keep thinking about it.
I went from a very abstract back to the rectangles again, but then I added, you see the final design, it did pop up somewhere when you were showing slides, but I have other abstract pieces to the.
This isn't yours.
I don't know, it was there somewhere. I don't know what happened.
Who's this? Does anybody want to claim this one? No.
That's mine.
Anna, yeah.
Oh, okay. Oh, I get it. I hear it. I see. I'm getting names. It's getting late. So it's Anna's and this is Amanda's. Okay, so we skip. We'll come back to Anna. Sorry. All right, Amanda, I'll go back in and look again and see if I can find it. Again, as I said, I was just bombarded with like different designs right at the end of the day. So I might have made a mistake, but yeah, just keep dreaming, keep doing it. It'd be great. Good. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Anna, this is yours.
Yes, that's mine.
Okay, good. It's pretty. I can't remember I can't remember your evolution of this, but I love the way you have the table in the center and the gate.
Thank you.
I think I sort of remember this in the chair, right? That's what the CH is.
Yeah. So originally I had like a fire pit kind of surround area to the left, and then
Oh, this is it. That's right.
Yeah, and then I was just thinking that it would be much more functional for my family to have it more like a larger seating area. So
Oh,
I kind of
nice.
pushed it out more.
Oh, that's nice. That's
Mm-hmm.
good. Good for you.
Thanks.
Good for you. Good. So did you measure the space? Is it going to work for you?
Yes.
Great. Good. Good. Do you have any questions? Does anybody have any questions for you? It looks what you're doing in terms of your plant list is you're doing a mix. Now, I can't remember. Do you have something in here now, or is this all new for
No,
you?
it is all new. So we moved into this house in October, and so all that's in the backyard is a just concrete pad
Okay.
and then the shed.
Okay.
So
Okay.
it's all new.
So you've done a beautiful job with your plant list. You must have done a lot of research because you have a really nice variety of things going in.
Thank you.
And
Yeah,
what I
it's fun.
like is it's a combination of perennials. I mean, I keep talking edibles, but you've got a real combination of some edibles and some herbs. And then you have some really pretty plants, the echinacea and the coreopsis, and this you'll just have a nice mix of, you're going to have a nice layering mix in there. It's going to be very pretty.
Thank you. I hope so.
Yeah. Yeah. So some of these, of course, you're going to buy by plant, right? You're not going to try and start the seeds, right?
Yeah, no, I don't have space to start all the seeds. So
Yeah. Yeah. Because things like buddleia and stuff.
no,
you just,
I'm gonna buy those as
yeah.
plants.
Yeah. So that's good. So get some good quality plants and that should be really lovely.
Thank you.
Good. Good work. Hardy geranium. That's one of my favorites. I love that as an edging plant. Carrots might be just a little hard just because as we've been talking, how you have to sow them and you have to be patient and you have all these other plants that are maybe greedy for space and
Yeah.
taking over. So you might want to replace that maybe with beans or something that will be
Okay.
able to germinate quickly and hold its own space in that area.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you.
Good. Nice. All right. I think we're almost done, everybody. All right, Candace. I like the way you've put in, I think you're here, Candace, the site plan again, so I can see it. So this is the property and the building. And oops, I didn't put in the actual building itself, but the narrow garden area there and then the detail here of the one of the beds. And did you add more to this? I can't really remember. Did you do more?
Yeah, I redrew this plan because the shade garden and the pollinator garden didn't have those sitting areas before. Now I've put in those rounded semicircle
This area.
sitting areas of like
That's
maybe
pretty.
natural stone.
Nice.
Yeah, thank you. So this is a close-up of the shade garden with those sitting areas. And I just kind of, have a basic idea of what I might plant eventually in this space. Some nice smelling and flowering evergreens, something with winter interest. And some
Yeah.
nice
Yeah, you're breaking up a little bit.
that we well
Yeah.
Yeah.
Candace, you're breaking up. I'm not sure if the internet is having a hard time, but we can't hear you terribly well.
On the blank day. Can you hear me?
Not really.
So I also submitted, yeah, sorry about that. It's my internet.
All right, I'm
I don't
gonna,
know about-
I'm gonna keep moving on then, if that's okay with you. Because I want to just get through this, but thank you, you've done a nice job, really nice, and I hope you,
It's all right.
I'm sorry, I just can't really hear you. So I'm
Go
gonna
ahead,
move,
and I'd say we move forward here.
yeah, all right, so Jen, how are you doing? Let me see what I have here, are you here? Yes, I'm so enamored with how you did your design. You did it the rough sketch, and then you used the tracing paper. And then there's your final design, which is so pretty, and you have your list. I don't know, is Jen with us tonight? Maybe not. All right, well, it looks great. I love the list. Kelly, did we do Kelly's? Yes, we did Kelly's. And Mary, I think you're our last one. Are you here tonight?
I am here, yes.
Okay, great. You also sent me a big stack of a PDF of lots and lots of pictures, and I just couldn't include all of them. But it just shows to me how you immersed yourself in this project, which is so nice. And that's what I really wanted all of you to do. I feel like you all just did your research and you got your plant list and you got, you really got into it. And I just think this is going to be so colorful and pretty. How are you feeling about your final design?
I like it. I had done something yesterday afternoon and then I did another one that I finished at 11 o'clock last night. So I changed it again. My most recent thing was I put the lavender around the semicircle right there. So it's fragrant and it will be interest throughout the winter.
Nice.
But yeah, I liked, I did my trellises to the bottom right and I did a little butterfly bush, a clustering of butterfly bushes down by the bench. So when you're sitting on the bench, you're next to a cutting garden, the butterfly bushes, and then they kind of block the vines, which in my mind are not always so pretty. And then my vegetables are up at the top, and I have sunflowers, more vegetables, and then that's I don't know if I'm saying it right, Weigela.
Yep.
And so that'll be real pretty, which is what the picture is right there.
Yeah.
That'll be the focal point. And what's behind the focal point is the woods. So when you're sitting on the bench, you'll be looking at that and then looking at the woods in the distance.
That's so nice. So you've come a long way because you really started with a vision and then you learned about the plants, you did some research and you've really put it all together and you're still picturing it in your mind's eye. I can tell just as you're talking about it. It's like, I know it's going to be like this because I'm going to sit on that bench and look at that beautiful. So
the comfortable bench.
I think it's great.
The bench of the picture is pretty, but it doesn't look comfortable. I'm going to find a comfortable one.
Good for you. I was amused because your plant list included this little fruit here. Can you want to tell us about that?
Yeah, I can't remember its name, but it's that green center is like jello, and you can put it in yogurt. It just was a crazy looking thing that I wanted to try.
And so is it going to be hardy in your area? Is it something that you think you can grow, or do you know?
I thought I could. Yeah. I mean, it's African something fruit. But
Yeah.
it is a vegetable plant.
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
And
good
I
luck
like-
with that. I like
yeah.
the fact that you're trying something new.
Yeah.
I've never seen it before.
Yeah.
I
And
think
those
it's
string beans are like 1 foot long.
well, great. Well, I think
The one
wonderful.
thing that I will just add is the butterfly bush is actually considered very invasive.
Okay.
So you may want to consider something other than that.
Okay.
I don't know, are you in Pennsylvania?
Yes, I'm
Yeah.
right in Delaware County, right near Longwood.
Yeah, you can Google it. It's considered an invasive species.
Huh, I never knew that.
I've had one for years. It's never moved a bit.
Yeah, and in Vermont, it hardly gets through the winter.
I can actually personally attest to their invasiveness. We have the property owners that had our house before us must have loved them because they planted many of them and they are just springing up all over our yard now. So they definitely like to spread around.
Wow. Okay.
That's all those.
Oh, good to know. That
Maybe
Nep,
it's a variety, maybe.
Yeah, maybe I could put some myrtle in there, just like a dwarf myrtle.
Oh, but butterfly bushes are beautiful.
Yeah.
Just one, you have,
that Nepeta is good. I don't know if that's gonna.
yes, that's very
Yeah.
nice. Good for lots of
Kathy,
bees.
Kathy, you weren't supposed to be in this class, I thought. You were
No,
coming.
well, what
tonight.
I did was I had the first class and it was over at 8:15, so I figured I'd get the tail end of this class.
Oh, okay, because I didn't put
And-
your work in tonight. It's coming in
No,
tomorrow.
it's okay because it's just been a very incredible busy weekend with company and then work, and I worked at work for 8 o'clock and then got up at 5:30 this morning to keep on
Oh.
working and
Oh,
yeah.
boy. Oh, boy. Well, it's nice. It's nice to see you.
I wanted
Um,
to see what everybody else did because they did a nice job.
Yeah.
These
Oh,
are
gosh. Okay.
beautiful
So this is
drawings.
a pretty one. So I don't know if Natalie's in. I'm looking at the clock. I know everybody's amazing the way they can hang on for
So
2.5 hours.
It's
Natalie-
actually it's not Natalie, it's Brittany.
Oh, Brittany.
Oh,
Okay. Are you
That's so
standing in for Natalie?
Well, so my mom, it was like the class was a Christmas gift from my mom, whose name is Natalie. So she bought the the class as under her membership. So that's why there's a little bit of a name confusion.
That's so funny because I saw your name, Brittany, and I was saying, well, now what? I haven't seen Brittany's design. I don't know what she's doing in this class. But I wasn't going to say anything. I love this picture with your soda pop and your and your pens and the way you did the chart. I just thought it was such a great. I mean, I do have another picture of yours in here, that one that we can look at more closely, but I thought that was just so natural and great, and the way you've set your plant list. But your design just totally confuses me because you've got so much going on here. Is this something that you've planted, that you're going to plant, that you're renovating? What are you doing with this?
So like, to long story short, so our house is like a split lot. So the long narrow area that looks like a path is actually like the white part that's not colored in brown is a sidewalk, and it goes up to the local elementary school. And so our lot, this is an outlot is what you're looking at. So the main yard is on one side that of the sidewalk, and this is the outlot that I've like slowly redeveloped. Now the outlet like blends into the woodlands, so you can't really tell where our outlet begins and ends with the woods, but it was covered in invasive species. It was just a tangle of vines. So I spent like a couple years just trying to get that under control, and like slowly started planting little bits and pieces along the edge once I cleared the area. And then as I did that, the people that use the trail really enjoy the flowers. And so I was like, oh, okay, well, I'll just keep adding some more. And so I added some more the next year. And anyways, it turned into this like wonderful way to meet my neighbors. And two, like people really enjoyed the garden. And three, like our main lot, the yard is like it's very small. So it was also a great way to extend, vegetable growing and cut flower growing. So the space I kind of imagined as something that people walking up the trail could feel comfortable walking into this space and enjoying the plants as an extension of cut flowers and extension of vegetable garden. So it is like mixed veggie and flower garden. But our two biggest challenges is soil and slope. So there's one area that's a little bit lower down that is like good soil. It is sloped, but it's not unreasonably so. And then like a midsection that I tried to indicate is very steeply sloped, and it's like marine and clay soil. So it's like really challenging. I've grown Tithonia and golden amaranth and sunflowers on it successfully. But in like broom sedge and some mountain mint, cardoons didn't take. There's some lavender that's worked there. So it's really problematic in the summer because we get these really torrential rainstorms, and the erosion is really bad. And so I was hoping if I planted it, maybe that would help with the erosion. And it has to some extent, but I think I need some retaining walls in there. So anyway, so it's like, it is a big project. This is like probably more of a 5-year plan. I can tackle, I think, like the lower part where the soil's good. But the retaining walls maybe a few years down the road.
So I've circled here. Thank you very much for the explanation. I've circled, it was hard for me to see what you have for edibles, but that explains it when you said you're mixing edibles with ornamentals, because it looked like you had things down here, asparagus and lemon cucumbers, and then over here you had something and so on. So
yeah, sorry that's not so. It was a lot like to measure everything out. So it's sort of like I was like,
it's
oh, I
great.
ran out of time in terms of like, making it clear. So it's like maybe a quarter of the way finished.
It's great. No, it's great. I mean, obviously it's a work in progress and it could take you a while to do, which is it just be fun. It's great. And it's nice you're doing it for other people. I love that.
My question is like, if you have like right now, like I've grown like gourds very successfully along the path. The gourds seem to really enjoy the really good soil. It's like, especially on the slope, but they take up a ton of space. So I guess like my question to you would be, if you've got like, there's like one section that would be great for growing vegetables, but we also have deer. So it has to be somewhat, like something I can do to protect it other than fencing it. Is there any vegetables that you would recommend, like in particular, like for, I know it's sort of like a deer resistance question, but yeah, I guess I'm trying to figure out what to prioritize in this area that is like there are deer there.
Yeah. I think we might have to have this conversation outside of this class because we're sort of running out of space.
Got it. Sure.
But does anybody else have any recommendations for Brittany on that topic? Oh, the only thing I can think of is arugula. I doubt if they eat arugula, but I could be wrong.
Okay. Oh, that's a good idea. Okay, arugula.
But just because I'm so nervous about
got it. Thank you.
About time. But yeah, just write me an email, and if anybody else has any recommendations, let us know. That'd be great. Yeah.
Thanks.
Great. Thank you. Good work. Good work. Tanya, I'm like, I can't believe, see, I told you we had a lot of student work here. I might have to just push this forward, everybody, but Tanya, you have been so helpful and engaging, and I love the way you're making such a natural wild yard, and you clearly know plants so well. I didn't want to skip over you, but I wanted to just show, oh wait, that's Tina. Oh my gosh. We're going to have another, Tim, we have to add another class. We're never going to get through all this. Tanya, you're with us. You want to talk a little bit about this?
Yeah, I can just very quickly. So you can see from that photo of the existing garden, I have some fruit trees that are already there, some plums, some European plums and peaches, and I have a couple of figs. And so I tried to use these new beds to go kind of in between to create more of an edible garden. And it's right outside of the kitchen. It's between the kitchen and we have a sauna, and there is a path that goes in from one to the other. And so this new garden would be in between them. And that's in an area where we spend a lot of time. So some of this is already there, but all of these new beds are I'm thinking about putting in this year, and one more archway. I really like that there is a water source over there, so that makes it much easier to water, because I don't like to use running water for that and prefer to use rainwater. That's, I know we're low on time, so I'll just stop there.
No, but that's great. I think it's so pretty. I think you continue to add to your design every week, which is really nice. So you're clearly thinking about it, and soon you'll be planting it. It's exciting.
Yeah.
good work. Very nice.
Thank you.
I'm sorry to be rushed at the end here. Tina, are you with us? She might not even be with us. Well, what I noticed about Tina's, she had this design, but then, and I think she talked about this last time, she changed it completely, which is really cool. So she uses the same space, but instead of doing that rigid design, she has these lovely little circles here on the edges, and she's really filled this in. I have a feeling, Tina, and we talked about her garden last time. So I wanted to just wrap up here, everybody. You know, just a quick review, and we're not going to have that much time. And if you need to cut out, you can. But, you know, in this class, we talked about design and keeping something beautiful in your mind. And I think you all have these visions of these gardens. And I know it might feel a little daunting when you get out there, but remember that 5-year plan, you can take your time to do it. And many of you are trying to follow this crop rotation, which is important, but not essential unless you start having, you know, problems with your soil or your plants. But it's a great way to keep the pollinators coming in for the flowers and keep rotating the crops so that the soil keeps staying healthy. And really what I've tried to convey most of all is to turn work into play, because you're designing this space to be a sanctuary, and a space where you just have fun and it makes you smile, and you just go out there and you know, the plants, you know, plants are so sensitive. They're going to feel your happiness. So just, you know, try and keep that area as a place of enjoyment, and adding a little table here or focal point for heights. And I know that all of you have done that in your designs. I'm so impressed that you're actually paying attention and integrating these things, and it's great. And consider that transition from the lawn into the garden. And find that sweet spot in your garden, that special place, and make sure that you do sit down. I think some of you I've mentioned to you in your comments on your assignments, just to remember that it's important to just relax and appreciate all that you've done and that you've accomplished. And same with your seeds and plants, diversify, and that 80-20 rule. And I really loved your plant lists, and I've learned some new things to try from all of you. So remember to plant lots of heirloom tomatoes, and to bring your guests down and cheer on those tomatoes and show off your gardens. It's very important to do that. So because as gardeners, it's important to share what you love with others, because I feel that this is one of our passions. And when other people see how we're passionate about it, it may inspire them to be gardeners as well. So just remember to play with your food in the garden and in the kitchen, and that there's only 2 things in life that money can't buy: true love and homegrown tomatoes. So, thank you, everybody. I'm going to stop sharing. And
thank you, Ellen. Thank you so much.
You've been wonderful.
Very, very nice.
Yes, thank you, everybody.
Thank you.